Would you believe me if I told you there was a good Call of Juarez game released after the cartel? Well, up until a few days ago, I wouldn't have believed me either. And man, this pisses me off, because I had no idea this game existed, and I was just thinking about how the cartel killed the entire franchise. I mean, was the cartel even really that bad? I mean, time makes you think shit's worse than it is, or better than it is all the time, so you know what, give me a sec. Okay, this may be a hot take, but from a gameplay standpoint, the cartel honestly isn't any better or worse than most FPS games from that generation. The controls feel okay, I mean they're responsive enough, the gun feels good, but the FOV is atrocious and the bloom is insane. It looks like there's a piece of that cloudy scotch tape on the camera lens, but at the time a lot of FPS games had these issues, and as far as I'm concerned, these are all just hallmarks of that time in console gaming. The most prominent complaints I've read on this game are that your AI companions are insufferable, and it didn't even take me long to come to that consensus organically. Your female partner, whatever her name is, seems like the type to fail a personality test, and the old dude is just like an older, grumpier Mr. Wilson if you're a raging alcoholic who beats his wife and shit.
If we weren't watching your back, you'd be motherfucking dead.
One thing I can't stand, however, is that when sprinting with the two-handed weapon out, the camera would bob in a really weird way that gave me severe motion sickness. With that, I realistically couldn't get too far into the game in one sitting, but hey, maybe one day I'll do a deeper dive into the cartel if that's something you guys want. Anyway, unlike the cartel, the one entry I never got to play back in the day was Call of Juarez Gunslinger, and man, after playing it a bit, I gotta say, I'm blown away. Now this is a western shooter. Gunslinger's chaotic gunfights, great scores, awesome weapons, and tall tales are all wrapped snugly in a soft warm blanket of lightly cel-shaded goodness. And I think the cel shading, along with the game's smooth and responsive control, is what makes this game as appealing as it is. Realistic art styles from this era of games aged, well, like dog shit, but Gunslinger skirts this nicely. Add on to that the fast-paced arcade shooting, and the game kinda feels like Borderlands in all the best ways.
Already mentioned that I found Hardin in this very saloon. Suffice it to say, nobody there was happy to see me.
The guns all feel very punchy and they look really good. One thing I love in particular is that you can tap the reload button to speed up the reloading on certain weapons. Not only does this keep the player engaged, but it also mitigates a very frustrating thing about revolvers in video games, the long reload times. And as a massive Hunt Showdown fan, I already spend way too much time in games reloading revolvers already, so I love this feature. The story mode has a hint of character progression in the form of a skill tree broken up into 3 parts, representing 3 different playstyles, or shotties, dual pistols, and rifle, to keep it simple. And man, look at these character intros. They're so fun. I mean, they're ripped straight from Borderlands, but I'm here for it, completely. The story of Gunslinger revolves around a retired bounty hunter named Silas Greaves, telling stories in a saloon to anyone who will listen. This narrative style goes perfectly with Gunslinger's Wild West theme, and it also lends some validity to the outlandish scenarios you'll find yourself in, the whole time wondering, is this really what happened?
Oh, I bet you got some great stories.
A couple. Any of them true?
Jack, be nice.
A few.
Along with this narrative style come parts of the games where the narrator will actually issue corrections and the game will change accordingly in real time.
I had a few ideas on how to get into that mine, but once I made my decision, I knew there was no turning back. So my first thought was to enter the nearest mine portal. I saw an entrance. Made sense. It's a good thing that I abandoned that ridiculous plan before I even tried it. Instead, I spotted a ladder, a way into the mine from the opposite side.
And I don't know what it is, but I love when games do this type of thing. It does a great job of blending both storylines into one congruent narrative, and gives me the feeling that I'm there in the saloon listening to the stories too. And all the stories in the game are based heavily off real-world events, but the way the game spins the yarn, as it were, are very creative. For example, in 1881, Billy the Kid escaped from Lincoln County Jail in Lincoln, New Mexico through a hail of gunfire, and the game handles this in a very clever way. Silas states that he and the kid looked very similar, causing the townsfolk to all mistake one for the other, and that's why no one ever placed a bounty on Silas. Another example would be the death of outlaw Johnny Ringo. If you're a fan of cinema but don't quite remember where you know the name from, Tombstone. In that movie, however, the way they depicted Doc Holliday killing him was just one of many theories. In reality, it's not known exactly who killed him or why, but the game claims it was Silas Greaves who killed him in a duel. I really like that they did this. They took a disputed gap of American history and built a narrative around that. So much of our real life history is really interesting already, so much so that often there's no need to even make up a story, just open a history book. The rest of the game follows the same format. Every mission uses real-life history as a springboard. On that note, one thing I really like are the secrets, or nuggets of truth. These give you historical insight into the inspiration of the level you're taking part in, which again, is amazing in my books. Anytime I can brush up on my history, I'm good with. My favorite level throughout the entire game is one where you're actually chasing Johnny Ringo down, but you end up at a sawmill. What a cool mission. The endurance round / boss fight against Curly Bill at the end of this level was very challenging, yet fair, and you really got to feel like a badass.
Brocious gave me no choice but to take his life. But Ringo was nowhere to be found.
Anyway, once you've finished the story but haven't had quite enough of that gunslanging action, head on over to the arcade mode. This is where you can find more straight up, non-stop, balls to the wall action. And as far as I know, the challenge levels are all the same levels from story mode. You blast your way through the dozen or so missions as one of 3 classes, Gunslinger, Ranger, or Trapper, all with their own stats, unlockables, and loadouts. Or if you want to take part in some classic Wild West gun duels, you can do so in the aptly named Duels mode. In any case, this game is definitely an underrated gem, there's no doubt about it. That's not to say it's without issue. For one, the controls can be a bit flighty at times, causing you to miss a lot of shots, and the auto-aim is atrocious. It always seems to aim right next to what you're trying to hit, and you often have to fight it to get it back on target. But the worst thing is that the auto-aim seems to prioritize explosive barrels over people, and it'll snap to them even if there's a guy right in front of you dead center and the barrel is way off in the corner of the screen. The auto-aim in this game has killed me more than any other game I've ever played. You know what? This game surprised me. I really wasn't expecting to like it as much as I do, and it was an absolutely awesome adrenaline ride from start to finish. It's nice to just kick back and blast away in an arcade shooter from time to time. I don't really know how to end this, but hey, if you like Western shooters, give this one a try. It's a great time. Anyway, I'm off now, but before I go, I'd like to thank you all for watching. I appreciate it, and have a wonderful day.